When you look at the narrative arc we're covering today, it is, honestly, it's
That's
wild.
a massive scope. Yeah.
I mean, we are looking at a story that starts with a king falling on his own sword to avoid torture, and it ends with a different king buying a piece of farm equipment?
A threshing floor, yeah, to stop a supernatural plague.
And the stuff in the middle is just as intense. You've got giant slaying, some very specific military rules, and the dangerous logistics of moving holy furniture.
Dangerous furniture moving is a great way to put it.
It really is. But seriously, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are digging into a very specific set of sources. 1 Chronicles chapters 10 through 21.
And this is such a pivotal section. If you sort of zoom out, this isn't just a history lesson. It's really a manual on transitions. We're watching the complete collapse of King Saul's regime.
And the rise of David.
And the consolidation of power under David, exactly. So we're going to look at how that power was built, the very specific men who enforced it, and, well, the high price of getting spiritual protocol wrong.
We have to start there, with the Old Guard. The text drops us right into the end of King Saul in chapter 10, and it is bleak.
Oh, it's not a glorious last stand at all. It's a total rout.
So the Israelites are fighting the Philistines on Mount Gilboa, and they're just getting crushed.
Completely. Saul's sons are killed, including Jonathan, David's best friend, and Saul himself gets pinned down by archers. He's wounded.
And this is where it gets so psychological. He knows he can't escape, so he turns to his armor bearer.
And he orders him, "Draw your sword and run me through."
It's this desperate calculation, isn't it? He says he doesn't want the uncircumcised to abuse him.
And that's not just a descriptive term. In the ancient Near East, for the Israelites, that was a slur. He is terrified of being captured, mocked, and tortured by people he sees as fundamentally other.
He wants a clean exit. But the armor bearer, he just freezes.
The text says he was terrified. And you can imagine, right? The chain of command just breaks. He's being asked to kill the king to save the king's dignity.
So he refuses.
He refuses. And that seals it. Saul takes his own sword and falls on it. And then, seeing this, the armor-bearer does the same thing.
Wow. It's a total collapse of the monarchy in a single moment.
It is. And the aftermath is like a horror movie. The Philistines find the bodies, they decapitate Saul, and they put his armor in their God's temple.
A trophy. It's total humiliation.
It is, but there's this one little counter note. The men of Jabesh Gilead, a town Saul had saved years earlier, they hear about this.
And they go get the bodies.
They launch a raid, retrieve the bodies, and give them a proper burial. It shows that even with a failed leader, loyalty doesn't just evaporate.
So that chapter closes, and the vibe immediately shifts from a funeral to a coronation. All the elders gather at Hebron.
And notice their justification. They don't just say, "You're the strongest guy." They say, "Even when Saul was king, you were the one leading us."
They're acknowledging he's been the real leader for a while.
Right. So David immediately starts thinking strategically. He needs a capital. And he sets his sights on Jebus.
Which we now know as Jerusalem.
A very bold move. The Jebusites were dug in. They basically taunted him, saying, "You'll never get in here."
But David turns the whole siege into like a job interview. I loved this detail. He tells his troops, whoever attacks first gets to be commander-in-chief.
Talk about high stakes. And Joab, son of Zeruiah, he wins the prize. He leads the charge, takes the city, and becomes David's right-hand man.
And this establishes Joab as the enforcer, right? He's brutal and efficient.
And loyal, but he's going to cause some headaches down the line.
So they take the city, and suddenly David is a superpower. But the text is clear he didn't do it alone. We have to talk about the mighty men.
Yes.
Because this list, it really does feel like we're reading stats from a video game.
It does. These are the special forces.
You've got Jashobeam, who took on 300 men with a spear.
And Eleazar. I love his story. The army retreats, everyone runs away from this barley field, but Eleazar just stops. He plants his feet and fights until his hand is literally frozen to his sword.
Wow. Just stand your ground. But the story that really struck me, the one that gives the best insight into why these men followed him, is the water incident.
Oh, this is such a crucial window into David's leadership style.
So set the scene. David's holed up in a stronghold.
Right. The Philistines are occupying his hometown, Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And David is just sort of venting, feeling nostalgic. He sighs and says, "I wish I had a drink from the well by the Bethlehem gate."
It sounds like a throwaway comment, like saying, man, I'd kill for a coffee right now.
Exactly. It wasn't an order, but 3 of his mighty men hear it.
And they take it as an order.
They do. They break cover, fight through enemy lines, get the water, fight their way back, and present it to him.
And this is where my modern brain kind of short circuits. Because I drink the water and say thank you, but he pours it on the ground.
It seems wasteful. But look at his logic. He
Mhm.
asks, shall I drink the blood of these men? He saw that the water was bought with their lives.
So to drink it would be to treat their lives like a commodity.
Precisely. By pouring it out as an offering to God, he's saying, this is too valuable for a human to consume. It belongs to the divine.
That's a huge statement of respect for his men.
A massive statement.
Speaking of risk, we have to talk about Benaiah. This guy's resume is just chaotic.
It really is.
He kills 2 of Moab's best warriors. Then, for some reason, he goes down into a pit on a snowy day to kill a lion.
The snowy day detail is just fantastic. It adds so much texture, slippery footing, bad visibility. It tells you Benaiah thrives in conditions where other people would just stay home.
And then he fights an Egyptian giant. The text says the guy was 7.5 feet tall with a spear like a weaver's beam.
And Benaiah walks up to him with a club, a stick.
He snatches the spear out of the giant's hand and kills him with his own weapon.
It's just absolute dominance.
But it wasn't just these lone wolves, was it? The text lists thousands of soldiers defecting to David.
And there's a really interesting political detail there.
Yeah.
The Benjaminites joined him.
Which is a huge deal.
It's a massive deal. Benjamin was Saul's tribe. These are Saul's relatives. For them to defect to David, it signals that the old regime had completely lost its mandate.
Even the family didn't believe in it anymore.
Right. And I have to point out the tribe of Issachar.
Yes. While everyone else is described by their weapons or their speed, the men of Issachar were known because they understood the times and knew what Israel should do.
You need that, don't you? In a power transition, you need muscle, sure. You need the guys who kill lions in pits. But you also need strategists who can read the political weather.
David had both. So he has the army, he has the capital, now he wants the spiritual authority.
Yes, he decides to bring the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem.
And this is where that protocol theme really kicks in, because this goes wrong fast.
It's a disaster, and it's a disaster of leadership. David consults his generals, his military guys, about a spiritual operation.
Wrong department.
Totally the wrong department.
Yeah.
And they decide to put the Ark on a new cart.
Which sounds respectful. It's new, it's clean, not some old dusty wagon.
It feels practical to us, but it was dead wrong. The law explicitly said the Ark was to be carried on poles by the Levites.
So by putting it on a cart, they were treating the presence of God like common cargo.
Exactly. They were optimizing for efficiency, not sanctity. And the result is immediate. The oxen stumble, the cart tips, and a man named Uzzah reaches out to steady it.
And he drops dead.
He does. And to a modern listener, this sounds incredibly harsh. He was trying to help.
I really struggle with that. It just feels so unfair.
It does, if you see it as a punishment for malice.
Yeah.
But think of the Ark less like furniture and more like a nuclear reactor core.
Okay.
It's the locus of immense power. There are safety protocols for a reason. And good intentions don't insulate you from the consequences of ignoring the manual.
So David is terrified. He parks the ark at some guy's house, Obed-Edom, for 3 months.
And the guy's house is blessed, which tells you the Ark isn't cursed. It just requires respect.
So when they try again, David fixes the process. He says, no one but the Levites may carry the ark.
They follow the manual. And the whole atmosphere is different. It's a party. There's music, singers, dancing.
But not everyone is celebrating. We get this little cutaway to a window where Michal, Saul's daughter, is watching David dance.
And she despised him in her heart. It's a clash of cultures. She represents the old, dignified, reserved court of her father.
And David is bringing in this new, expressive, almost undignified form of worship.
She's watching the future from the window of the past, and she just can't get on board.
So the ark is home. David is feeling secure. He looks at his own cedar palace and thinks, I need to build a proper temple for this ark.
And God shuts him down.
A hard no from the prophet Nathan.
God says David has shed too much blood. He's a man of war. He can't build the house of peace.
That has to sting. He's won everything else, but he can't have this.
It would be a blow, except for the counteroffer God makes.
Yeah.
It's a play on words.
Yeah.
David wants to build God a house, a literal temple. But God says, no, I will build you a house, meaning a dynasty. He promises David's son will build the temple, and David's line will last forever.
See, ultimate, no but.
Exactly.
Moving into the next phase of his reign, David is now fully established. He's winning wars, stacking up gold and bronze. But the war with the Ammonites, it starts over a diplomatic insult that just feels bizarre.
The shaving incident.
Yes. Explain this. David sends envoys to a new king, Hanun. And Hanun thinks they're spies, so he shaves off half the beards and cuts their robes in half.
It sounds like a frat prank to us, but it was a calculated humiliation. In that culture, the beard was a symbol of masculinity, of wisdom. To shave half of it was to publicly disgrace them.
And cutting the garments exposed them.
It was an act of war. It was intended to say, I do not respect you or your king.
So David unleashes Joab. This campaign also brings us back to the giants. The giant slayer thing wasn't just David, it became a culture.
Right, his nephew Jonathan kills a giant with 24 digits, 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot.
Which shows David successfully replicated his own courage in his followers. But then the tone shifts. We go from external victories to an internal failure.
Chapter 21 opens with a very ominous line. Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census.
We need to unpack this because to us, a census sounds like good governance. Why is counting people as sin here?
That's the key question. It wasn't about taxes or demographics. In this context, it was about military strength. David was shifting from trusting in God to trusting in his own numbers.
He wanted to quantify his security.
Exactly. He wanted to know exactly how much muscle he had. And you know it's a bad idea when Joab, the guy who kills people for a living, is the voice of moral reason.
Right. He begs David not to do it. He asks, why bring guilt on Israel?
But David is stubborn. He overrules him. The count happens. And the judgment is swift.
David immediately knows he messed up, but the consequences are already in motion. God gives him a multiple choice selection for his punishment, which is terrifying.
It is. Option A, 3 years of famine. Option B, 3 months of being destroyed by your enemies. Or option C, 3 days of plague, the sword of the Lord.
How do you even choose?
David's logic is fascinating. He says, let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is very great. He trusts God's anger more than he trusts human enemies. He picks the plague.
The cost is staggering. 70,000 men die. The angel of the Lord moves through the land, sword drawn, and stops at a specific place.
The threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. This is the climax. David looks up and sees the angels standing between heaven and earth.
And he takes full ownership. He says, I am the one who sinned. These people are sheep. Let your hand be against me.
He steps up. And God instructs him to buy that threshing floor and build an altar. Now Araunah, the owner, sees the king. He presumably sees the angel. He just wants this to be over.
So he offers everything for free. The land, the oxen, the wood.
And here is the line that defines this whole story for me. David refuses. He says, I will not sacrifice a burnt offering that costs me nothing.
Why? Why not just take the gift?
Because a sacrifice without cost is just a performance. It's an empty ritual. David understands that repentance requires personal investment.
It has to hurt your wallet a little.
It has to be yours. He effectively says, I cannot worship God with someone else's property. He insists on paying full price.
He builds the altar, fire comes down from heaven, and the plague stops. But that piece of land, that's not just a random farm, is it?
No. That threshing floor, bought in a moment of judgment, becomes the site of Solomon's temple. The place where the angel stopped his sword is the exact spot where Israel would worship for centuries.
It ties the whole story together. The house God promised to build for David is anchored to the ground David bought to save his people from his own mistake.
It's a beautiful narrative loop.
So if we're looking at this whole narrative from Saul's suicide to the threshing floor, what's the big takeaway?
I think it has to be about proper order. Whether it's moving the ark, fighting a battle, or counting your people, the text insists that how you do things matters just as much as what you do.
And you can't shortcut the holy.
You can't. And as we saw with the census, success can be dangerous. David handled giants and armies just fine, but he stumbled when he tried to measure his own strength.
When you start counting your assets to feel secure, you stop relying on the source of that security.
Precisely.
A lot to think about there. Here is a final thought for you to carry with you. The story ends on a threshing floor, a place designed to crush wheat to separate the good grain from the useless chaff. It's fascinating that the site chosen for the temple, the ultimate place of meeting God, is literally a place of refining and separation. Perhaps that's not a coincidence.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye.